You are looking at a picture taken in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. A group of people are arguing about who should look at, how it should be looked at, where it should be displayed, how it should be displayed, with regard to a kind of clothing that they had no hand in designing or inventing. Additionally, I strongly doubt any of these people had any hand in creating or designing the individual examples this museum is using. So why the fuck do people care so much about their opinion? Well, all it comes down to really is them having the right shaped face. The picture comes from a Boston Globe article titled, "Counter-protesters join kimono fray at Museum of Fine Arts." As the article lays out, the controversy is just that this museum wanted to run Kimono Wednesdays, in which you could try on a kimono and look at a Monet painting of his wife wearing a kimono. Protesters have called this a form of cultural appropriation and racist exotification of Asian culture, as the article says. And I recommend you read the article. It's a fine article, it's just a bit of reporting on what's going on. However, I'm just going to leave this one quote up and go on a sort of rant. I don't believe in racial ownership of culture. I don't believe in demographic ownership of culture. When people talk of Japanese culture, to me, that is the culture of that geographical region, not the culture of Japanese people or people who have come from Japan. I'm going to need some time to explain, because you might say, well, all that culture is going to be by Japanese people though, isn't it? Yes. But in terms of ownership, if I had to say anyone owned it, it would be the individuals doing it. I believe that all over the world, people pick up culture with the same tools. Our senses are not fundamentally different. Our brains are not fundamentally different. If that were not the case, I do not think people who are not from Japan should be able to look at a kimono and just like it. It shouldn't appeal to them. And I think it appeals to people who are not Japanese in exactly the same way that Japanese people see it and pick it up. I don't really separate a Japanese baby growing up and encountering a kimono for the first time from a white person in Boston going into a museum and seeing a kimono for the first time. You might say, well, that Japanese baby has grown up in Japan and it's seeing the kimono through the lens of its Japanese culture. I don't think people are so uniform as that. And if anyone were to make that counter argument, what are Japanese Americans doing talking about it? They've got their own lens from their background. It is not a Japanese lens. But at the same time, I cannot imagine there is one Japanese lens. Like I said, I simply do not believe people are that uniform. And so, when it comes to picking up culture, not creating anything, no matter how much you like it or how much you incorporate it into your life, it's just not yours. You didn't make it. It's only as much yours as anyone else who decides to incorporate it into their lives. There is a small exception I would like to make, but I can't make it until later when I've explained some more of my viewpoint. So people all over the world look different. Why do they look different? To speak very simply and as a layperson, we look different because we're in different places. We have adapted to different environments. But we've only really been apart for a blink of an eye, so the differences aren't that much. I mean, we can all still have kids together, right? We're not that different. And yet we've been shaped slightly by our environments. Culture, similarly, I think is shaped by people's environments. Obvious examples being, if you're in a hot place, your clothing is going to be different to if you live in a cold place. An artist in Japan, drawing what is around them, is going to create different art and add to culture differently to someone who lives somewhere else and is drawing what's around them. That may seem incredibly dumb. You might be saying, hey, look at Captain Obvious here. But trust me, it's important. I think the thing being influenced by that environment in all cases is more or less the same. Pick out any two individuals doing this stuff, they are not going to be very different. The faculties they use to look at the world around them are going to be pretty much identical. So to me, art and culture are of the individual doing it and of the environment, not of all the people of that environment. Now here's the exception. People are part of your environment, and additionally, the culture they are sharing is also part of your environment and will influence what the individual creates, but only in that individual instance. It's like a snapshot. It tells you what individuals or a group of people come up with when they're put in that environment, which includes pre-existing ideas, the people around them, and their physical environment. And I would say, unless you were there, unless you were part of that snapshot, you are as much an appropriator as anyone else in the world. You being descended from those people has nothing to do with your ownership of that culture. Maybe you could claim ownership if you were truly different from other races and nationalities. If you had 4 eyes, a different kind of brain, a different kind of taste and smell, you felt touch differently. Maybe you could say, this is my culture. But then, if you were truly separate to the rest of mankind, they probably wouldn't like your culture in the first place. you would be an alien. And so, the thing that I think owns culture is the situation in which it is made, and the individual making it, or small group if they're working in a creative team. At least when it comes to culture in terms of things people have deliberately made. We tend to assign things that are more spontaneous to the situation in which they're made, but when it comes to things people have deliberately created, we have this weird sensation of wanting a piece of that, and you go, this person has a face like mine, this is my culture. Fuck off, you didn't make shit. You just picked it up in the same way that anyone else in the world would pick it up, because you are not special. And because the world isn't split up anymore, we have the internet, we can fly to places. Everyone is picking up everything, because we're more or less the same in the way we pick things up. I mean, otherwise, we wouldn't have these blazing, sudden international trends, would we? We wouldn't slip together so easily. But back to my point, when it comes to things that are really, really special, art, music, fashion, blah blah blah, the thing that you can say is special about it is the situation from which it comes and the people who made it. So to me, you cannot own or be part of culture that existed before you. You can be part of new culture, you can be part of culture influenced by the past culture. Ideas and things that already exist that you go and look at, you're picking up in no different way to anyone else looking at it and just picking it up. Your interpretation may be different to others, but that applies to every individual on Earth. That's not special. What could be special is what you make. What could be special is what you're part of, this new sort of international interconnected world where everything made is made in that context. And at the same time, you have more competition than ever. That's new. That is progress, and that is intimidating. It means because the world isn't split up, you can't rely on stealing shit from your dead ancestor to impress people with. You're not going to be able to pretend that you own it anymore. So when I see these protesters trying to control the way people look at things, I don't see social justice, I don't see progress, I don't see racial sensitivity. I see grave robbers. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.